Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. So the more I look around and I see these arguments, the more I'm convinced that the world is nothing but manifestation of different names, and it is true that it is the case. And without these names, nothing could receive any of the attributes that we attribute to them. We think living things are alive because of natural causes. Well, just think about it. The natural causes themselves are not causal. Things we see gravity, but gravity is not empirical. Nobody has ever touched, looked, seen gravity. We've just mathematically predicted the outcomes of a force that is pulling. You see what I mean? So it's just enigmatic. The scientific language is deceptive. It obscures the most immediate experience of life. Don't you think so? Or is it just me thinking like this? Influential figures behind the contingency argument. So, in the Christian tradition, through Farabi, Ibn Sina, Imam al-Ghazali, we have figures like, Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica, the third way, he detailedly discusses the contingency argument. That comes to the same conclusion as we have it here. And we have Leibniz, whose understandings far went beyond Newton's understandings, right? I think Leibniz, he was a contemporary of Isaac Newton, but he was a philosopher, not a scientist. He was such a genius guy that he predicted in one of his writings that I listened to a couple of years ago. He said that units of matter are units of energy. Doesn't it sound striking and close to Einstein's theory of E equals mc squared? That ultimately the energy matter is energy, and he predicted that, I know, philosophically way before Einstein. Leibniz, a religious man. So maybe if time allows in the coming weeks, I could be presenting within 40 minutes what the Christian tradition of the contingency argument entails. Okay. All right, let's read that. Ms. Nermin, if you're available this time to be reading this passage,
Yeah, teacher.
go ahead.
Perishability versus divine abiding. All that
Abadi.
is abiding. All that is upon it will perish. Science for reflection, horizons, and souls invite rational inquiry. God as al-Haq, reality, truth as the ground.
Okay, so God is the only one who's going to remain. Everything is going to perish. Hence, again, reminding us of the contingent nature of everything. Because they're in need, nothing they generate, it creates a lot of humility once we know this fact. Okay, dependency ladder. This is just for clarification. Mr. Muhammad?
Dependency ladder ranks atom to molecule, organism to ecosystem, then planet, cosmos, loss, and meta loss.
Yeah, so we have atom that is still within the realm of physics, the molecules, organisms, ecosystems, planets. So we're zooming in and zooming out and out and out into the cosmos and into the laws and meta laws. So they're sort of dependent on each other. None of them has the explanation of their existence within themselves. That's the thing. Okay. And this is just a helpful illustration to get the things across. Okay, let's get to Al-Farabi, one of the most favorite special philosophers. And if you can look at the beard, he doesn't have much beard because people in Central Asia, they don't grow beard. Okay, just just as a general reminder. Okay, Ms. Nermin, read it.
Sharpness the necessary contingent distinction, essence, existence in creature. God as simple, necessary, one no composition, no potentiality. Emanation scheme, one phase intellect, celestial,
Hierarchy, I mean stars and planets, celestial.
celestial hierarchy, sublunary realm.
Okay, so have you heard of the emanation scheme? Emanation means coming from. Okay, this is a thought from Neoplatonism when back in the days, Neoplatonic texts were translated into Arabic. Farabi was the first person or the beginning persons to read these books and to incorporate it into the broad scheme of the Quranic and Islamic ambience and atmosphere. Okay. It's very interesting that everything comes from the first intellect. First intellect is the first created thing. Think of it as it is not a complete, we're not sure whether or not that's completely the case, but from what I've read, the first intellect could be akin to the pen. God in the Quran says of the pen that the pen inscribes everything. So maybe the first thing that was created was the pen of destiny. Okay? Or Prophet Muhammad says the first thing that was created was my light. Have you heard of Light al-Muhammadiyah? Nur al-Muhammadi. So light of the Prophet, not as the embodied physical Prophet, but the soul, so to speak, was the first thing that created before anything else. So the first intellect, through it, other things emanated, came from, in a sort of like a chain. Then came the planets, the stars. Sublunary means below the moon, the earthly things. So there was this hierarchy embedded in this idea. So the first intellect was directly coming from God, is like the pen and or the light of Muhammadian. These are the two most the best approximations of how to understand this first intellect. Al-aql al-ula in the classical falsafa tradition. Okay, so he was the first guy who made the distinction between essence and existence in creatures. So it's very hard to come up with these ideas if nobody have ever said it, isn't it? Maybe it is simple. Okay, he just, he said there's a distinction between contingent, necessary, essence, and existence, right? But he was the first guy who came up with it, who got this spiritual intuition. As far as I've read, this is the beginning person who's thought about that. Okay, aim, Mr. Muhammad.
Preserve divine unity while explaining multiplicity, order without compromising simplicity. He sees the essence, existence, lens, Avicenna systemizes each stages being derivative,
Derivative, that I shall.
received, yeah, received, hence contingent.
Yeah, imagine of a hierarchy, the first intellect, and through the first intellect, we have the other planets and other celestial bodies, sublunary bodies. They're all coming and derived from the first intellect. And the first intellect is derived in order from God as well. You see? So through that, and later Avicenna systematizes the idea of the essence and existence of things. Okay, then let's go to Ibn Sina, Avicenna. He was also from from Uzbekistan. I don't particularly know what city exactly. And Al-Farabi was from a city in modern day Kazakhstan. Okay. Burhan al-Siddiqun, Miss Nermin, go ahead, read from there.
Burhan Siddiqin, proof of the truthful from being as such to necessary existent, divided reality necessary in itself versus possible in itself, made necessary through another.
Yeah, so basically Ibn Sina was arguing that all beings are either necessary, wajib, okay, or contingent, mumkin. Contingent means mumkin in the Islamic translation. And if it is a contingent thing, then it depends on something else for their existence. This chain cannot regress infinitely, as we said. It cannot go back infinitely in a chain of causality. So it must terminate in a necessary being. But it doesn't mean in the chain until the termination point, um, you know, God is not there. So don't be thinking that from the beginning, God has said everything, that everything is working on its own. No, even as things are standing at this moment, still they're dependent. And I think in the German religious tradition, they've thought of this as the height of worship is complete dependence on God. Have you heard of that? Complete dependence on God. And look around you. In the Quran, it says everything praises God in their own tongue of disposition. So the very fact of their dependency shows their needy station and how they worship through recognizing their, their role in their own cognition. Okay, any questions? No? Creatures, quiddity doesn't entail existence. Go ahead, Mr. Muhammad. What was that? I didn't see it. I'll be listening, but I can't talk. Okay, it's completely fine. So I'm gonna replace your place in terms of the reading. Creatures, quiddity doesn't entail existence. You can define a phoenix, it needn't exist. So we're talking about essence. Quiddity means essence. It is a more technical word to describe essence. So essence doesn't mean existence. You can think of, I don't know, of, as I said, a pink cat, something like this. It doesn't need to exist. So they're not the same. Only in God, essence equals existence. No added actuality needed. Uniqueness, God is unique. Not He's one and unique, no two necessary in itself. So if there are two necessary beings, then they would differ by features, and each would be dependent, and hence it fails. So the ultimate point has to be one, no more than one. Otherwise, it creates ambiguities, and the explanatory power would be diminished, and we have Occam's razor that the least postulates, the better explanation. Okay, all right. Ms. Nermin, go ahead. You continue this passage.
Infinite stack of dependencies never reach something that has existence intrinsically. Need a non-derivative terminus necessary existence to prevent explanatory collapse. Why something rather than nothing, answered only by non-dependent being.
Yeah, this is the perennial question. Why is there something rather than nothing? There could have been nothing, but there is something. And the explanation is through a non-dependent necessary being. Once we realize and recognize this, either from logical conclusions, but I would say from spiritual intuitions and ontological vision, then we can know that He is Al-Haq, He's the only existent, everything else receives its existence and endowed through God's goodness. It is because of God's goodness that we have existence, because existence is an act of generosity, if you can think about it. Everything is embodying existence. They're being given existence, not from God had no choice. Just the very fact that things could have been otherwise means God had a choice. He could have not made anything to exist, but things are existent. Then it shows choice, freedom of the will, and it requires thankfulness from us. Okay, never reaches, if it is infinite regress, it never reaches something that has existence intrinsically. Everything depends on the other, and we need a non-derivative terminus, necessary existence. Okay. If you ask why there's something rather than nothing, science cannot ever explain this. How on earth science that only deals with the empirical and the physical give you a satisfactory answer to the origin of existence, not the behavior of existence, because science does its job best as to how nature behaves, and it predicts through a dashboard of representations of words and language, but it never explained existence as such. Focus on hudud, then we go to Imam al-Ghazali, and hudud basically means things started in time. There was a beginning for every single physical entity and for the physical world as well. This is hudud, and the opposite word is al-qadim. Back in the days, the philosophers argued that the universe could have been eternal. There was nothing theologically wrong with it. But Imam Ghazali actually went against it, that says, no, there was a complete beginning point for everything. He argues against the eternity of the world, defends divine freedom and will. And, he also talked about occasionalism, how we don't have cause then effect. Everything is an occasion for God. Like when there is when the sun is hitting the surface of the ocean, when there's evaporation, it is not like the sunlight was the cause of the evaporation. No, it was God enabling these two things to happen, the occasion for that to happen. You see what I mean? So there is no cause and effect. And actually, in one way, you can think that the cause is simultaneous with the effect. We normally think that the cause comes first, right? We have a cause, then temporally, in time, then we have the effect. But if you think about it through the occasionalist lens, there is no duration between the cause and effect. It is a simultaneous act. Do you get this point? No temporal distance between cause and effect. Just in our mind, we have cause and effect. Otherwise, they're simultaneous. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Critiques he critiques actual infinite paths necessity leaking to God's willing of particulars. Basically, I think Ibn Sina said God only knows about the universals. He's too high to know about the particular things of, unnecessary details, right? But we know that God is caring and present in everything. So he actually rejected this idea of some of the philosophers thinking that God only knew the universals and not the particulars. God chooses among possibilities, not bound by nature. It's not like God has to make the universe. No, the universe could have not been existed. Although Ibn Taymiyyah says God's attributes required from his nature for the universe to have been eternal. It's like God is a light, and that light has to be shed on something. Coming from Ibn Taymiyyah is very interesting. He did not have a beef or problem as much as Imam Ghazali with the eternality of the universe, because still, not through time, but through ontology, from their own big existence, eternal or otherwise, it still depends on God. Aristotle would say everything is eternal, the universe is eternal, and it has eternally existed in their awe and wonder of God. You see, so there's a spiritual reading of the universe being eternal. So, you know, there's this room as well in the Islamic tradition. The richness is there. But God chooses, okay, outcome. A creator who knows particulars and acts freely, consistent with revelation. Yeah, he was very consistent with the revelation. And obviously, Ibn Sina in this regard was wrong, that God did not know about the particulars. And he pushed for a personal God, like a God that has knowledge, that has will. It's not like an impersonal, necessary being that doesn't have the attributes of God, right? So it's not an impersonal force. It's not an impersonal, blind, uncaring, unmerciful force. No, personal God. We have a Qudsi hadith that God says, "I was a hidden." Yeah. So exactly the Qudsi hadith says God was. He says, "I was a hidden treasure, and I created everything to be known, for me to be known through them. It's like everything is a mirror." So he was a hidden treasure, and out of love, he's actually using the word hub, and out of love, everything came into being. Kun fayakun enacted everything to come into being. Why? The push was love, and so that everything would get to know God. So the pinnacle of everything's duty is to know God. Uh, yes, and to show God as well, show God's beauty on the other activities. Okay, here we have. Ms. Nermi, go ahead. Sorry, this is here. Yeah, we did that. Then we go to Al-Fakhruddin al-Razi, the systemizer. He was a theologian. He wrote a huge tafsir. Okay, many volumes, very famous. The tafsir was an intellectual and theological investigations of the verses of the Quran. He was considered to be one of the most sound and sensible persons in the history of the Islamic tradition. Okay, Ms. Nermi, go ahead and read that for us.
Catalogs prove contingency of essence, hudud,
Teleology.
teleology, etc. Right, writes Abyssinian contingency proves as most fundamental, least empirical assumption.
Yeah, so basically, he said some proofs in one of his books. One is teleology, that everything has a point. Teleology means purposefulness. Everything has a purpose. It is design, something like this, the design argument. Hadith, everything began in time. If you make the argument that everything that begins to exist has a cause, Therefore, the universe began to exist. Therefore, it has a cause. It creates problem because maybe there are theories that say no, the universe was eternal. But the point and strength of Ibn Sina's argument that Al Fakhruddin Razi says is the most powerful, it doesn't base the argument on time. Okay, continue, miss.
Refines divine knowledge, freedom, discussion, reconcilable with poor knowledge.
Yeah, he wrote a lot and extensively about this topic, and God had knowledge. It was not like he was necessitated by anything. He had knowledge and freedom to bring in everything about. So he refined the Abyssinian philosophy and the Ghazalian. So he synthesized both of them. World could have been otherwise. Sizes, laws, constants, arrangements, our biological forms, everything we can see chemically, biologically, physically. We know that it could have been otherwise. And specificity among live options hints at a chooser. Since things are of a particular shape, of a possible shape, that means there was a chooser. If things were not otherwise, then we would endanger God's choosing ability. Because you are a free chooser, a liberal chooser, insofar as you could have made things into other shapes and forms. Converges on a necessary willing determinant beyond the contingent field. Okay. Attributes means attributes of things, the size, the shape of things. They're still contingent. They could have been otherwise. And that's why it shows that God is being a free chooser. Ms. Nermin, go ahead. Asalat wujud. This is Mullah Sadra. This is somehow deeper than, very, very deep ontology. Ontology means the study of being. Okay? Then go ahead, Ms. Nermin. Read that as well.
أصالة الوجود, primary of existence, existence not essence, is fundamental. تشكيك الوجود, gradation, being are intrinsic degrees of one reality. Intensities, degrees of one realities. At substantial motion, reality is dynamically intensified toward perfection.
Yeah, but so basically, Mullah Sadra doesn't base the proof on the concept of a contingency of things, on a chain of contingency, rather on the principle of the primacy of existence, asatul wujud. Okay, and he believed that existence itself is a single graded reality. Okay, and imagine that every single contingent thing, humans, trees, animals, angels, there are different degrees of the intensity of existence. And he said this existence is light. He borrowed that from a Suhrawardi and the Ishraqi school of thought in Islamic thought. And everything is on a spectrum of light to the, on a hierarchical structure. And the weaker the light, the more shadow there is. So the world, dunya, means lower world, right? Dunya, adna, means lower. So this world is a world where there is weaker light, in a sense. So he sort of urged to reflect on existence itself, not the behavior. Existence itself. The mind is led directly to a pure, independent, self-subsisting existence that we call God. So God is not just the end of a chain of causes. He's not the end waiting at the end of the tunnel, waiting at the end of the tunnel of causes, but he's the ground and source of all existence. Okay? So he's not just a being somewhere at the end waiting, and he's not present anywhere. No, he's the ground of everything. He's present in everything through his names and attributes. So that's why he calls it the argument of the truthful. So this idea of the degree of life is very, very central in the Mullah Sadrian, metaphysical outlook that existence equals light. This is very important. We can bring Quranic verses like God is the light of the heavens and the earth. Have you heard of this verse before? Have you heard of that before?
What verse? What
God,
verse, sir?
Allah nur samawati wal ard. God is the light of the heavens and the
Yeah,
earth.
yeah.
right? So existence is
Yeah,
it equals light. And it wouldn't be too far-fetched from this verse, isn't it? Just as light admits, we have degrees of intensity in light, isn't it? If something is light, then we have to know that the nature of light entails different degrees of intensity. Some are bright, some are dim. But still, a dim light and a bright light is still a light. And he says God is the absolute light. He's like the sun, pure, unlimited. But he's not the sun, because the sun is still material. Creatures are lesser lights, and it is different than the different kinds of existence. There's still one reality with different gradation, with different degrees. So we don't have multiplicity. He reconciles the idea of multiplicity. Although it appears there are multiple things, but they're still on the one wavelength, so to speak, of light. That their essence is not physical in nature. Is not physical. What I think of as light is not physical. Although they appear to have physical forms, in their essence, they're light. And the closer we are to the primary light, ultimate light, the more we are endowed with light. So the Kurdish, Mullah Sadra and Shahrazuri, they were all, I'm not sure, is it Mullah Sadra or Suhrawardi that were Kurd? I think Mullah Sadra.
Mullah Sadra, I think he's Persian. He's not Kurd.
Suhrawardi, and but he was influenced by Suhrawardi. Suhrawardi was Kurd, and Shahrazuri as well. They were all focused on light. In the Kurdistan region, we had a lot of focus on light. We have Nowruz, we have light and fire. These were all signs and symbols pointing towards a higher reality. I think this is one huge contribution that we can give to the world. This is more cogent and more hopeful than other philosophical systems, in my understanding. Okay, so in Islam we have two main strands of philosophy. One is the peripatetic, that is the Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi and al-Masha'i philosophers, and we have the Ishraqi philosophers, Ishraq, illumination philosophers. So Rawadi Mullah said that most of them are Kurdish people. Okay, Mr. Ahmed, can you read it now? Unavailable?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Start from the reality of existence. Start from the reality of existence, not abstract essence, quiddities. Finite existence, grace marked by need, presuppose an apex without need. Pure
This is
existence.
very, very, very
بسيط
central in his writing. Sorry for the interruption. The idea of need in Tasawwuf, where also everything is beseeching God. God is the besought. Everything in their tongue of disposition, we're in complete need because we can't do anything. I'm speaking, I'm not dependent on myself. Nothing is depends on itself. So everything is in a state of need, and it presupposes that there is somewhere an apex, a zenith, a peak that is without need. Okay, read from Pure Existence. Continue, Mr. Muhammad.
Pure existence, بسيط الحقيقة, necessary being, present as ground of all degrees, less chain of causes, more ontological light source. Sir, before you start, I think 9 minutes has remained to finish.
Yeah,
The
I
meeting
know.
is gonna finish.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I know. Okay, so we're gonna do as much as we can. Where is it? Oh, okay. Okay, so less chain of causes, more ontological light source metaphor, and God is the ground. God is not the nur. He's nur samawat al-ard, but he's not. None of the lights we see is God. He's the ground that enables these lights and these different gradations. Traditionalist reading. So we go to a contemporary voice. Sayyid Hussein Nasr. Ms. Zareen, go ahead and read it.
Traditionalist reading rehabilitates classical arguments against modern reductionism. Creature's essence, borrowed existence, radical dependence at every moment. God al-Haq, the real, sustaining existence, existence continuously, not a gap filler.
Yeah, so he's a real, sustains existence, and he's a qayyum, not a gap filler. We don't know something, this is God. No, no, we're not dealing with, observable, empirical, material causes, but how they, in their essence, are sustained. So, okay, dependence, radical dependence at every moment is his contribution. Okay, then we go to Muhammad Iqbal. Obviously, they've said a lot more than these paragraphs. These are just little bits of their, lights shed on top. Mr. Muhammad, go ahead.
Suspicious of first cause, car, car,
Caricature.
caricature,
Caricature.
caricature prefers a living, creative God, true infinite, includes, embraces the finite, not a boundary that excludes it.
So we have theism, pantheism, and panentheism. Okay. I think he's close to the idea of everything being within God. Nothing is outside of God. You see? So every, God embraces the finite. Pantheism means the totality of the universe equals God. What we call God is the totality of the universe. This is pantheism, means beyond theism. Panentheism means everything is within, not equals, is within God. Every finite, contingent thing is within God, within the embrace of God's, let's say, names and attributes, so to speak. If if it is possible to express it this way. Falsafa. We're getting to summaries at this point. Ms. Darmin, you go ahead.
Essence, existence, analysis, modal necessity, open to eternal cosmos, still dependent, attributes deduced from necessity, unity, simplicity, immateriality.
Yeah, so from the philosophical perspective, even if the universe is eternal, multiverse, whatever it still is dependent. Although it is so ridiculous to think at this point for the universe to be infinite or to have a multiverse. But even if that is the case, then still they're dependent. Attributes is still from necessity. It must have a unity. It must be simple. It must be immaterial. It must have will, knowledge, and all the other attributes. And we talked about existence and essence. Quiddity means essence, okay, just so you know. Okay, this is and then from the Kalam perspective, Mr. Muhammad.
Temporal beginnings, al-huduth, divine will and power, scriptural theism and personal agency, guard, God's knowledge of particulars and freedom. Many thinkers straddle both Razi later, etc.
So straddle means they synthesize. For al-Razi and Mullah Sadra, they both synthesize the Kalam and the philosophical tradition. It's not like either or. You either choose Kalam or choose philosophy. No, from both you can get a synthesis that they're pointing. The conclusion is the same, right? There's a necessary being. But the metaphysical pathways that are being embodied sort of are different, but still the conclusions are the same. And it shows the richness of the Islamic tradition, that these manifestations allow or shows a richness in the tradition. Okay, Mr. Amin.
A family of contingency arguments, modal cosmological ontological leaning, converge on one necessary existence, differ on root and metaphysical toolkit, ongoing debates, divine will, knowledge, eternity versus origination, presence versus causality, stress internal pluralism as intellectual strength.
Yeah, we have explored three families of contingency argument. The modal arguments is modal means logic here. So God is logically necessary. Okay. Cosmological means it deals with the Kalam cosmological argument that was propounded and succinctly elucidated by Imam al-Ghazali that went into the Christian tradition. That is, anything that begins to exist has a cause. So he pointed on the beginning and the temporal nature of the universe. Then we have ontological necessity of, Everything contingent is ontologically dependent on God. So it doesn't matter the temporal. And I would say the ontological is the deepest. But this is not just in language. You have to get this vision and see things as everything is in a complete and continuous and ongoing need and dependency on God for every single moment and movement. Because we see verses in the Quran that no leaf falls without God's knowledge of it. You see? Just, just God's kun fayakun act. We may or may not understand it. Okay. This is an internal pluralism that shows intellectual strength, not discrepancies and what we say different sects and these sectarial wars that we can fight at each other. The Kalam says, "No, I'm right. You philosophers are stupid." No, this is ideas. This is just it's not the way to approach it. Okay, what is it? Why doesn't it go? So, all right. We have come to an end of a brief introduction to the contingency argument, and I hope it was of some kind of benefit. And my last words would be the everything in their atoms, all the way to their organ systems. It's not like God only sustains or everything depends on the molecular or atomic level. No, even in the systematic level, nothing exists but God. Ultimately, everything has existence because of God, through God, explanation through God, in order for them to be made sense. Okay, we could still have a scientific explanation of things. This goes like this and that, the howness of things, but still, this howness should be grounded within a religious framework. Any thoughts from your side?
I just want to add something. Religion and science, I think, cooperates. Religion answers the questions of why, and science just answers what and how.
Yeah, I think more than the how, the what.
Isn't that true?
I think the whatness of things is still science doesn't say what things are. It's metaphysics. But so, yeah, science deals with how things work, which is superficial compared to why they're there and what they are.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, we're a few seconds away.
I have a question, but I think
You may ask it in a
not
group.
remain.
Yeah.